It says starting. Damn, that was good. I wonder what happened to it. End live video. Okay, let's try that again. All right. We had a we had a great practice run there, and it turns out I wasn't streaming it. So now the welcome to the Angry Albertan live stream. We have a special guest for you in store today, and she has been working tirelessly behind the scenes. We have with us the creator of the Albertans Against Bill 10 Facebook group, which has been instrumental in running all sorts of letter writing campaigns, targeting Kenny's actions during this COVID-19 pandemic. They've also been targeting the actions of a bunch of other public figures. And so it's just an honor to have her here today. We're here with Ilea from the group Albertans Against Bill 10. Hi, Ilea. How are you?
I'm doing good, especially now that you actually got the live running, Josh.
Well, I can't be perfect all the time.
Well, that's okay. I'll let this one slide. Anyways, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. The pleasure is all ours. You have been kind of waiting to see what's happening in our new school year, and I've been watching this a bit myself, and it's not looking good. We knew it was going to be bad. I don't know if we knew it was going to be as bad as it is. You've been, really examining this, and you've came here to share some of your findings today. What do you see happening in schools today?
What I see happening is absolutely horrific, actually, what's happening in the schools this year. Our wonderful Chief Medical Officer of Health has set out one set of guidelines for everybody. And the school boards are now taking it upon themselves to go above and beyond these guidelines that they are putting out for the school systems. And some of what they are doing is, let me put it to you this way. I'm so happy I pulled my daughter from school.
You pulled your daughter out.
I could not even imagine. I did. I couldn't even imagine having a child in the school system right now after reading these stories that have come through and seeing what's happening.
And you, I believe, made that decision to pull her out even before a lot of these ridiculous guidelines came into place. I mean, we knew they were going to be dealing with social distancing. I mean, we saw pictures in France of kids sitting in little boxes out on the asphalt on the playground that they're not even allowed to use. They have to be in a little box on the asphalt where they can't talk to anybody or touch anybody or run around. It's a 6-foot box. Honestly, that's kind of what we're seeing now, except it's you sit in the box and you wear a mask. I mean, we were told by Dina Hinshaw that masks wouldn't be required under grade 4, but that's not what we're seeing, is it?
That is absolutely not what we're seeing. I've had numerous parents contact me over the past week and a half now, and we are seeing that school districts are taking it upon themselves to leave the orders up to interpretation, and they are mandating masks right from kindergarten through grade 12.
Kindergarten. I'm sure that's got to be just totally doable to make an entire class full of kindergartners keep their mask on without fiddling with it or touching it or trading it. Or this seems kind of ridiculous to me. So, and have the school boards provided any reasoning as to why they're essentially defying the orders of Dina Hinshaw?
Well, we haven't personally gotten any emails back from the school boards. I don't know, maybe they didn't like what we had to say when we started sending our letters in. But I have spoken to other parents, and the school boards aren't even quoting facts right now, unfortunately, when it comes to their reasoning. They're using Mythbuster episodes as the reasons for having to put kindergarten children in masks.
And I mean, really, there's very limited evidence that says that masks have any benefit, period, let alone these cloth masks that the Jason Kenney government provided. They've provided each student with 2 masks. They only came in one size, so it's the same size for a kindergarten student as it is for a grade 12 student. And I was speaking to my teacher friend. He says the entire high school got leopard print masks.
Oh, because that sounds stylish.
Yeah, and you get 2 of them to last you all year. And now, Dina Hinshaw also said that children should be able to remove their masks when at their desks, and that they would really only be required when traversing through kind of common areas of the school, like hallways and whatnot. I'm guessing you're going to tell me that that's not what we're seeing out there either.
That's absolutely not what we're seeing. I actually had stories from Elk Island Public School and Grand Prairie School Division, and they are mandating not only for the kindergarten through grade 12 students to wear the masks, but that they have to wear them while seated at their desks as well. Especially for these poor children that are kindergarten to grade 3, their lungs are still in a crucial developmental stage. This is almost borderlining on child abuse.
Well, I think, it's just common sense that, when you restrict your air intake, you have a very much increased chance of going hypoxic. I mean, it's going to lower your blood oxygen levels. That's not going to be bad. That's not going to be good for their concentration. It's not going to be good for their learning. Heaven forbid, if a child has a hearing disability, I mean, how are they supposed to see that teacher's lips move? Now, all the civic bylaws that we've seen, like Calgary and Edmonton, they have a lengthy list of exemptions for masks. People with medical conditions or anxiety. There's it's a very extensive list of people who can be exempt to wearing a mask, and are schools honoring these exemptions?
Funny you mentioned that. One of the stories that was given to us was about a student that has a heart condition. And when the original guidelines came out, the parents were told that they did not need a doctor's note, that the medical exemption would be honored, only to find out just days before in person class started that they were required a doctor's note. They obtained the doctor's note, they submitted the doctor's note to the principal, vice principal, and all other people in the school that needed to have copies of this letter, only to find out that the first day of school, the student's desk was placed into a corner with 3 desks around her that were empty, and the teacher told the class that nobody was allowed to go near her because she was exempt from wearing a mask.
So basically, they've completely excluded a person with a disability from participating in the same way as everybody else.
I have heard this has since been rectified, but that was her first day of school. Could you imagine walking into a classroom like that?
I think that sounds like a nightmare.
And that's not the only stories we've been hearing with regards to what's been going on out there. I have a 6-year-old in kindergarten that was wearing a mask all day and came home and spent the weekend with a bacterial infection.
And that is a common side effect of all day mask wearing. I mean, if you were in a surgical setting, you would change a mask every 20 minutes. These children are being expected to wear these masks, and they get soaking wet. You get dead skin cells and the dirt from their hands on the masks. It's a warm, moist environment. You're going to grow bacteria there. We're seeing pictures of people with skin infections on their face. People are getting respiratory infections. Even just wearing these masks oftentimes leads to a scratchy throat, which is a symptom of COVID, right? So basically, if you have any discomfort from wearing a mask, unfortunately, you're displaying the symptoms of COVID, aren't you?
Well, and it's not just that we're hearing from with regards to parents as well either. One of the common things we're hearing right now is nosebleeds, recurring nosebleeds from the constant mask use. I have teenagers, again, these are parent stories coming in at Chinook's Edge School, and they aren't even getting breaks while they're doing gym outside while playing soccer from their masks. And they're having to wear their masks the entire time and are having recurring nosebleeds because of this.
This is not good. I mean, I know a lady who's in our group here, and she was wearing a mask, trying to, go along to get along, and actually ended up blacking out and hitting her head severely, and she's got a traumatic brain injury now that she's going to be dealing with for a substantial period of time. And there are serious consequences to some of these side effects. Sometimes it's a lot more than just a little acne. And here we're doing this to our children, who really face zero risk at all from death of COVID. How many children have we seen die of COVID-19?
0, believe it or not, in all of Canada.
All of Canada.
All of Canada, ages 19 and under, there has not been a single COVID death in Canada.
Wow.
Yet here we are.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of the whole pandemic, isn't it? None of it makes any sense, but they just keep ramping up the restrictions and making it even harder to survive. So what happens? Could you explain what happens if someone shows the symptoms of COVID in a classroom these days?
So, in Alberta schools specifically, if someone is showing symptoms of COVID, they are to be picked up immediately from their parents and taken home. Now, there's still not quite 100% understanding as to whether or not a negative test will be required to return back to school. But if any COVID symptom, which we're talking something as simple as a sniffly nose, and if you have children like I do, you know how often a child can get a runny nose.
Right, no kidding.
They have to stay home for a minimum 10 days or until the symptoms clear. And again, we're still waiting for clarification whether or not a negative test will be required to return to in-person classes. And this is just Alberta right now. We've been hearing some horror stories from across Canada with regards to what's been happening to children displaying symptoms of COVID.
Sorry, I was just trying to see what people were saying on the comments section here. So now, do you know if a child is sent home with the symptoms of COVID, is it just the child that has to self isolate, or is it the whole household? Like, what happens there?
Depending on what the symptoms are. And I know there's different regulations on that side of it. And forgive me, I don't have them open in front of me right now. But from what I understand, so long as the rest of the household is not displaying symptoms and the COVID test comes back negative, they do not need to quarantine.
Would they? But it may take some days for that test to come back, right? So would they be isolating in that time period? I suppose. I
As far
believe
as
that.
I know,
I think that's what's supposed to happen, isn't it? So
I believe so.
So let me get this straight. Our schools are expected to operate under these conditions, and if they get any more than 2 cases, is what I've heard, then it's an outbreak is declared. At what point they close the school, I don't know. But I mean, so if a teacher wakes up with a sore throat, I mean, they're going to turn the furnaces on here this week if they didn't turn them on today already and blow the dust everywhere. Um, are these schools even going to be able to operate under these conditions for very much longer? And will people be able to keep their jobs and meet all the requirements of the school and this provincial health officer? I mean, like if all this self quarantining and all this business of the entire family, I mean, how many sick days do they think people have?
I don't think they really care about the people, which is exactly why we're sitting here fighting, especially for these children.
Yeah, no kidding. So you've put together an incredible letter with your group. Those watching the stream, you can find the letter linked in the description below, and I left a long list of emails there. You should copy that list of emails and the link to that document into an email, and you should just hit the send button. Even though it's a mass emailing thing, I mean, they have to catalog every one of those. And if you want, print it out and mail it in. That's a real pain in the butt for those government people because they have to scan it into the computer and it takes them a whole bunch of extra time. So if you got a couple stamps kicking around, mail a few of those in. However we can get that message across to these politicians. And in this letter, you've outlined some of the horror stories. Is there another horror story from the schools that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. This is actually a grade 11 student, and I'd like to read the story in whole because it is such a heart wrenching story that I can't even paraphrase this parent's words. So, directly from our letter, my son is exempt from wearing a mask for medical reasons. And when the school sent us the medical form to fill out and bring back to school, we did our part and filled it out, and he brought it into the office on the first day. The first day of school was a challenge for him as several of the teachers in the school pulled him aside in the hallways and asked him for his medical form and informed him that he should feel terrible for endangering the lives of everyone in the building. My son informed the teachers that the required form states that a doctor's note is not required, so it was not included. Only a description of his medical condition and how they can overlap with COVID symptoms. I received a call from the student's assistant principal the following day stating they would require a doctor's note for the exemption as they were not prepared to approve the exemption. It took 2 days for us to be able to get in for the doctor's appointment to obtain the note for his exemption. And I did not send my son to school for these 2 days as my son was very scared they were going to force a mask on him and he didn't want to be sick from it and then be sent home with COVID-19 symptoms. When the doctor's medical exemption in hand, he went to school the following morning. Once he handed in the medical exemption, which was not a requirement, the assistant principal then decided that my son either had to stay 10 minutes after class or leave 10 minutes earlier than all the others in class because they feel that he is a health risk to everyone else if he exits at the same time as others. They also inform him that if he is ever seen within 2 meters of anyone else in the school, he will be sent home. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely signaling him out for his medical issue. This is absolutely wrong to put a child through this who is just trying to get an education.
Boy, they sure seem to have thrown all the hard work and dedication that the differently abled have done over the past few decades to alleviate discrimination. And overnight, it seems these people are being treated essentially like lepers, even though they have no symptoms. They don't have the disease. They stand at a very low likelihood of even catching the disease, let alone dying of it. And yet they're being treated like lepers just because they won't conform to these mask-wearing policies. This is not the country I grew up in.
No, and I'm sure you've heard the story in Stettler, I believe it was Clearwater County, about the high school student, the senior, who showed up for the first day of classes with no mask on and was actually escorted off the school grounds for failure to wear a mask.
By the RCMP, no less. They called the cops on
By
him.
the RCMP. They did.
Yeah, and I mean, just the other day, I posted it on a live stream where a man was trying to grab a coffee in Montreal at the Tim Hortons, and somebody called the police on him for not wearing a mask, and they came and pepper sprayed him in the face, and then tackled him and hauled him out. And I mean, like, we're not that far from doing that to our high school students now. Like, what's next, people?
Yeah, it's not just the high school students. We have to remember the younger children as well that are getting affected just as badly throughout this. There was a story that was also sent in to us with regards to a 7-year-old child, and this is from the Edmonton area schools. And due to no fault of his own or his mother's, his water bottle fell out of his backpack on his way to school. His mom nor him had any idea that he had arrived at school without a water bottle. And because of the new COVID-19 protocols, his mom was not even allowed to bring him a new water bottle or his old water bottle from the back of the car to his class. Water fountains have also been shut down in the school. And this 7-year-old child went all day without water because the teachers didn't even have access to a disposable cup to give him water from the sink. He was 7.
Yeah, and as if they didn't have a cupboard full of washable coffee mugs in the staff room that he could have drank out of. Now, if I didn't provide water for any of my children for over 8 hours, and an educator found out about it, I think it's pretty likely that Child Protective Services would be paying a visit to our house. And yet, these teachers think they're saving the world.
Well, and it's actually funny you mentioned that. One of the stories that we have seen from Manitoba, so this is still Canada, just not quite as close to home as Alberta, but it is our neighbors. A child developed a runny nose and was placed in an isolation room, which, if you've ever done any research on isolation rooms, they are pretty horrific places for young children to begin with.
Yeah.
They left this child there by herself while they tried to contact the parent, who was in a meeting or an appointment at the time. And after trying for 3 times and the parent not answering the phone, the school took it upon themselves to call Child Protective Services to have the child removed because she had a runny nose.
Wow. So yeah, if your child has a COVID symptom in class, that isolation room is going to be their first stop, and they're going to stay there until you get home from work to pick them up, I'm assuming.
And they get masked if they're not already masked. There are very, very few schools that are not forcing mandated masks, especially on the younger children. But if they develop COVID symptoms, they are forced to wear a mask until the parent comes and picks them up.
Right. And I wonder if that's going to be one of these cloth masks provided by the Kenny government that only comes in a size large. And basically is, I've heard entire high schools have been receiving leopard print masks, which I think is completely inappropriate for a school. And
Could
even
you imagine that high school photo? Like, hey, we're going to take our graduating photo with what looks like leopard underwear on our face.
and I mean, there's no evidence that cloth masks do any good. They've never cloth masks have not been studied in the general population. Period. They've been studied in healthcare settings, in settings where people are trained in the proper use of a mask and the procedures and protocols to make it happen. I mean, a surgeon only is going to wear a disposable mask for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. At the first sign of moisture, they throw it away. And so, I mean, if it's a lengthy procedure, I mean, he might go through a dozen masks. And yet, Jason Kenney thought it would be adequate to give our students two, and that's supposed to last them for the entire year. And I still have nurses emailing me today saying that they're still being forced to tolerate these Chinese made totally bogus masks that smell like chemicals and are causing all sorts of reactions. I've heard that hospitals are now using them for patients instead. They get the ones that cause all the irritation. So you go in for one problem, you may come out with a completely new one. This is the world we live in now. I don't know. What do you have to say, Ilea?
Honestly, this whole thing has gone way above and beyond. Your audience knows, and we all know, that there is nothing to be worried about, especially when you look at the fact that 8 deaths in Alberta have had no comorbidities. That's 3.3% of the entire deaths have had no comorbidities. All others have had 2, 3, or more comorbidities. So the fact that they are taking literally the lowest risk category, which is the children 19 and under, and forcing them to wear masks all day, keeping in mind that a lot of these children live rural. So when you add up the time frame that they spend on the bus to and from school, plus the entire time that they are at school, some of these children are being forced to stay in their mask for 9 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week.
And I've been talking to seasoned medical professionals who are angry that they're being forced to wear masks for 8-hour days. And because a nurse never, in normal times, would never be wearing a mask all day. They would put it on for certain procedures. Most procedures don't require it. It's only certain conditions with an open wound would they put something like that on. And now they're complaining about having to wear these for 8 hours a day, and you expect rural children to take the bus to wear these things for 10 hours a day.
And not only that, they're expecting the children to do this while they're doing physical activity outside. And they're still expected to stay in their masks. The children of Alberta should not be having to hide in the corner of a library to take their mask down for 5 minutes so they can breathe in hopes that they don't get caught without their mask on.
Well, even our idiot mayors in Edmonton and Calgary put in exemptions for, mask exemptions while you're working out or physically exerting yourself. And
apparently those exemptions don't apply to schools.
And I recall a couple of months ago reading about some students in China that died during gym class because they were forced to sprint in a medical mask, and it killed them. And that was a real news article from an actual news outlet in China. And here we are. You would think that our officials would maybe watch the news. And Dina Hinshaw wouldn't even support that. So, I mean, these people are going so far above and beyond of what anything Dina Hinshaw has asked them to do. I thought Dina Hinshaw's guidelines went too far. I don't think kids should be wearing masks at all. I would say the majority of this audience would say that kids shouldn't be wearing masks. They're at no risk. And yet here we are, and they're taking it even further than what Hinshaw has said. So, and has Jason Kenney said anything other than that brief snippet on the Danielle Smith show? Like, he has no plan. It's going to be just like Edmonton and Calgary's mask bylaw, where he's just going to completely ignore the problem and let these school boards run amok.
Which is why we need to take it upon ourselves to make Jason Kenney aware. So I cannot applaud every parent enough that has reached out to me. I know the courage that it took you. If you are watching this live stream, thank you for sharing your stories with us so we can share these stories to the government to show them exactly what is happening in our schools right now. Without these stories, they can put their head in the sand and pretend that everything is perfectly fine. But we know the truth, and we will keep advocating, and we will keep sharing the truth until change happens.
Yes, mail in that letter, people. The link to the letter is in the description below. If you could put that in an email, and there's a long list of emails in the description too. Send out as many copies as you can. Like I say, mail it in if you want to use snail mail. Phone your Jason Kenney. Phone your public school board officials. Get your
And that's
complaints in.
actually that's one place that we weren't able to include emails because there are 61 school boards in Alberta. And by the time we started going through emails, realizing that there was superintendents, chairs, vice chairs, we would have had a 300 long email list. So if you are able to send this into your actual school division, that would be another step forward of helping to raise awareness, especially towards the Teachers Association, as to what is happening in these schools. The school boards themselves need to see what's happening. So even if you just send it to your individual school board, they need to know what's happening.
Well, my wife told me a story that I believe came out of Calgary, and I'm really going to have to try and dig up that post because I haven't actually seen it myself, so I probably shouldn't report on it. But I heard that a young girl, fainted and busted out her teeth and is now requiring something like $40,000 worth of dental work to fix the damage that she took in a fall that was caused by these stupid masks. And you're going to make kids run around in these things. Like this is dangerous. This is counterproductive. And if that weren't bad enough, when these masks do produce symptoms of their own, they're going to be labeled as COVID cases. They're going to shut down the schools. Parents are going to lose their jobs, and then they're going to lock us all in our houses again for the second wave. So, I mean, we need to get these politicians on board here because this is getting to be pretty darn scary. We need thousands of you to mail in these letters and personalize your own letters. Send them every day. Just be a thorn in these people's sides. They can't ignore. Like a few months ago, we clogged up Jason Kenney's phone line for a week. There's no reason that his phone line shouldn't be clogged up now. I mean, there's a lot of parents watching this stream. There's healthcare professionals that are sick and tired of dealing with what they're dealing with in the hospitals right now and the hypocrisy and the BS. There's old people that have not been let out of their nursing homes in 6 to 7 months, and they're begging to be released. One of our friends has a mother in a care home and was speaking to a resident there, and this woman was pleading to be let out. And the thing is they're allowed to go, but they're being lied to and they're being manipulated. And just like we all have been, thinking that you're saving somebody else by putting that mask on or not going outside or not shopping. No, you're killing somebody's business. You're breaking up somebody's family. You're, screwing up an education. I mean, enough is enough. Let's get these letters mailed in. Ilea, are there any other points you'd like to make about our schools?
What I would like to talk to, especially parents of students out there that are able to write in themselves, we would love to launch another campaign giving students a voice this time. We have given the parents the voice, we have heard from the parents. We want to hear from the students now. We want to know what you guys are going through facing this every day, having to be in these masks. We will post up different links across different groups for the parents to access. And if they are able to pass these links on to their children, we want to hear the children's stories. If the parents' stories are not enough, the student stories are going to be, because they cannot ignore what is happening to these children when the children are speaking up, and the young adults. We have to keep in mind that we have graduating classes that are very close to legal voting age, and they are going to remember what is being done to them in this school year as well too.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. They unfortunately we have to we have to get them woken up first. So many think that they're saving somebody else by putting on that mask, and the reality is you're not saving anybody. You know what? This is a normal flu season. This was a fairly heavy flu season before they declared the COVID outbreak. But we've seen several sources that says that this outbreak goes back in North America to potentially August. So this year's flu season probably was COVID. This is a setup. It's a scam. You're not saving anybody. When you put a mask on to go along to get along, we can't tell you apart from someone who's on our side or on the other side. Make a stand. And if you're a kid in school, ask to be exempt. Just stand up for yourself. Don't be the pushover. No one's going to respect you for just putting on the mask. They'll pretend to, but you're just one of the sheeple. You're part of the herd. Stand tall. Anyway.
Be the high school senior. Be the high school senior.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid to get escorted off the property.
Organize a protest, high school seniors. Just take those masks off. Throw them in the garbage. What are they going to kick you all out? They'd probably try. Whatever. You get to spend some time at home. Anyways, anything else you'd like to add, Ilea?
I want everybody to know that we are going to keep fighting, and we are not going to stop advocating for these children, and we are going to keep trying to make change come around for these kids. The children deserve better than what is being handed out to them in these public schools right now.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think we all deserve better. I think the children are getting it hard right now, but our old people, man, they've been suffering the whole time. And I mean, I think that's even worse. And that's another thing we have to focus on. The closed businesses, White Ave, 50% vacant, Jasper Ave, nothing but 4 lease signs. It just doesn't seem there's any end in sight. Seems like Doug Ford wants to lock down Ontario again with their rising case numbers. We all know this test is bogus. Hinshaw was asked in her live stream on the 14th, if testing asymptomatic people would produce false positives. She wouldn't even answer the question, even though the Ontario chief medical officer said that asymptomatic testing produces false positives at a rate of up to about 50%. So 50% of your positive test results in people without symptoms are false positives. They're bogus. So the more tests that you run, the more cases you're going to find. And now every school, if you get 2 students, that's an outbreak. An outbreak. So, you go ahead, Ilea.
It's actually funny you bring that up, because Hinshaw herself stated that asymptomatic testing occurs for every 1,000 tests. There's 6 people that test positive for asymptomatic testing. So we need to figure out why we're all wearing masks when the Chief Medical Officer of Health is admitting that only 6 in 1,000.
Well, yeah, why are we wearing masks when Hinshaw didn't even say that we had to wear masks? Yet the mayors of Edmonton and Calgary do it anyway. Yet the school boards mandate it for, undergrade 4 when Hinshaw didn't even go that far. Why has Hinshaw mandated masks for children at all, period? It makes 0 sense. You can go to work. All through the pandemic, a grocery store clerk could work without a mask. A plumber could be up to his armpits in liquid feces and not have to wear a mask. Well, I worked through the whole pandemic. I'm fine. So many people have worked through this, and you hear the teachers whining and complaining that they're at such high risk. You know what? Get some exercise, lose a little weight. Take some vitamin C, try not to give yourself diabetes. You'll be just fine. And even if you have 1 or 2 of these comorbidities, you still stand. As long as you're under the age of 80, you're still at like a 99% survival rate. If you're under the age of 80 and healthy, 99% or greater survival rate. Yet this is what they make us tolerate. So people got to speak out. They got to tell their friends and neighbors. But I mean, you can't even. They just disown you now anyway. So
I don't know. There's still some good ones out there.
Well, I don't know if I didn't just take a look at these comments here. It looks like there's a lot of them, and I think it would take me quite a while to scroll through them on the phone. So maybe we'll leave that for another time. But thanks for doing this.
Sounds
Ilea.
Great. Thanks for having me. And like I said, do be on the lookout. We are hoping to launch another campaign here in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to sharing those posts for you, and I will send in my emails and my letters. And maybe we'll do up some memes and stuff, get people to share the memes, get the phone lines clogged up again, and I don't know, maybe we can turn this thing around because that's kind of what we all want.
Got to keep trying. That's all we can do. Thanks again, Josh, for having me, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Ilea, for being here. This has been another episode of the Angry Albertan live stream. We will talk to you some other time. Bye.
Bye.